Have you ever heard of the term classroom incivility? If not, you're certainly not the only one. If you're thinking about what that term means, it's exactly what it sounds like. Unruly, disruptive students behaving badly in the classroom. And certainly, that is nothing new. Students have always misbehaved, and schools have had protocols and other forms of disciplinary action in place to curtail adverse behavior. But classroom incivility is different from the average misbehaved student. It can involve more than 20% of students in a given class, and sometimes around 50% of the students. The problem that it has caused over the last 50 years is really astronomical. Teachers have now decided to take to social media such as TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube to vent their concerns. But what difference is it making? All of their ranting seems to have fallen on deaf ears, and this is evidenced by a lack of parental support and public policy aimed at addressing the problem. The quality of education has been diminishing for many years, and it is indeed a discussion that ought to be had by our lawmakers. But strangely, it never made it into the last election cycle or the one prior. As a matter of fact, we've not been really talking about the problems with our largely taxpayer-funded educational system. On the right side of the aisle, school choice vouchers were proposed, but we won't know where we are with that until well into the GOP term. And I also want to make mention that vouchers are addressing an entirely different issue that is related to the quality of the school and not necessarily the students themselves. In the meantime, what has the system implemented to mitigate classroom incivility? Well, according to educators, nothing that is substantial. I can tell you from my own experience that over the years they've been experimenting with various educational models, and many urban schools have now begun to use the social and emotional learning model because they believe that it will deal directly with some of the causes of misconduct. I would describe SEL as more of a student-teacher therapy session that is happening in a classroom setting. Now, I'm not saying that teachers are encouraging students to talk about anything uncomfortable, but I do believe that going about it this way is suggestive, and it puts the teacher in a role that he or she ought not to be in, which raises a question. Should teachers be forced to do more than teach? Teachers these days don't seem to educate, simply because they can't. They're dealing with disruptive students who can't even sit still, let alone concentrate on some task at hand. So the administrators are basically telling teachers that they need to somehow gather these misbehaved students, sit them down, and expect them to listen to a lesson on how to deal with anger or trauma. I've never heard of such rubbish. Let's just stop it. Let's stop it now. So this is what's really happening. Many of the students that are in elementary through high school are developmentally challenged, and that is why they cannot behave. Friends, I want you to continue to hear me out, because we are contributing to the developmental disabilities of our own children. Contrary to popular belief, and this is the popular belief right now, the problem of autism, the problem of ADHD, and many other neuro or psychological disorders is not coming from vaccines or the environment. Friends, we are the problem. We have done this, but we don't want to deal with that because we like to look outside of ourselves and blame everything but ourselves. Now, this is certainly not discussed, and if it is, it's among the elite, and they are not revealing it publicly. And because they refuse to deal with it directly, it's spilling over into the society at large. I mean, it's no secret kids nowadays are illiterate. That is out. We know that from standardized test scores that have been continually dropping. But instead of revealing the fact that these children are developmentally challenged, or shall I dare to say they're now archaic, mentally retarded, they blame teachers and systemic racism. What does systemic racism have to do with a student coming to class on time? having a seat, not calling out, not wandering the halls, not being combative with the teacher or his classmate. I've heard the argument from social workers about the effects of trauma. Many of these students that are in these public schools where we are talking about classroom incivility are in urban areas. And they're also in rural areas, but I don't think many studies are really being conducted in the rural areas of the country. And so these students have trauma in the household. They're born under traumatic circumstances, and all of these problems, all of these issues that they have, they bring it into the classroom. I have a question for them. I have a question for the social workers and the so-called professionals. Is it possible to overcome one's trauma? Are we really trying to give students the skills to do that? Seriously. No. That's not what you want. That's not what they want. And we know this because we're not seeing any improvements. Instead, what we're witnessing is that classroom incivility is progressively worse. We're not doing the students, teachers, or the rest of society any justice by allowing for this kind of failure. People in the fields of education, administration, human services, and psychology thrive on classroom incivility because they're getting paid. But at what cost? We're not going to live forever. Who will carry the torch when we're gone? I'm telling you, friends, it's all going to collapse, and it rightfully should. It's happening now, but they don't know it because nothing from nothing leaves nothing. The truth is that they could care less about what is happening in the classrooms. What they want is for teachers to play the same game that they're playing, which is siphoning taxpayer funds. We're not aloof. These administrators and consultants are getting paid top dollar to do what? All taxpayers are really doing is sustaining a system that is babysitting students until they age out. And many teachers know what I'm saying is true, but they deal with it because they have to pay the bills. And I pose the question to the teachers, who now want to be called educators even though they're not educating. What will be the long-term cost of your complacency? I ask because many of you think that you'll do your job and make it out unscathed. Believe me when I tell you, you won't. If it's not happening now, it will happen. Many of you will experience health problems that will mirror the psychosocial emotional issues that your students experience. You will develop neuro and psycho disorders like ADHD, and you will become short and irritable. Depression will strike without warning. You will also experience mood disorders that you cannot control. But wait, it doesn't stop there. The disorders of the mind affect the body. This happens in the form of high blood pressure, elevated cortisol levels, which contribute to obesity, arthritic joint anxiety, panic attacks, insomnia, strokes, and PTSD. What kind of teacher does not love him or herself enough to leave a job that is causing illness? But they don't see it this way. They can't see that the source of illness is a lack of love. What I've revealed here is damning, but you must understand that it needs to be exposed. The blatant fact is that they do not want to solve the problem of classroom incivility because it keeps scores of people employed, whilst upholding the false narrative called systemic racism. Schools can continue to receive funding for DEI initiatives, social workers, psychologists, private consultants, special ed teachers, and the list goes on and on. Do you want to know what systemic is? It's the government-run schools that are rife with these crooks. It's a corrupt business that thrives not on the educated, but the uneducated. And friends, we can say the same for the healthcare system. It thrives not on wellness, but malady. If you can see this, and I hope you can, the world's systems are like an inverted pyramid, which is the symbol of disorder. So you might be wondering, what can we do about this? How can we stop this? Well, that's the thing, friends. You can't, we can't, and we don't need to because it's crumbling now. That's because the foundation of everything is love. Where there is no love, There is disorder in the body, mind, and external world. You see, friends, one issue comes from the other, and so forth. The plain fact is that we do not love our children, because if we did, we would not contribute to a system that is using them as a cash cow. There simply is no integrity, and there is no heartfelt love. We have sacrificed it for material security and riches. Friends, we think that because we can feed, clothe, and shelter our children, that is love. Yes, what you take care of, you love, but we're not doing anything for the inner person. We are not shielding them. We are not protecting their mind and their heart. And because we are not doing this, we are not caring for them the way that they need to be cared for. And it's showing, friends. We're sick and they're sick. If you learned something and you would like to hear more of this content, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. The time is now.